Most people know and love valerian for its roots. You've probably heard of valerian root. It is a main ingredient in almost every sleepy time tea on the market, including my Better Sleep tea. It has a teensy bit of valerian root. Now, if you've never been exposed to pure, clean, independent valerian root by itself without any other plants with it, there's something you need to know. Valerian root smells awful. It is like honestly one of the most putrid smelling plants that I work with. In fact, when you boil valerian root and you steep it and you turn it into a tea or an infusion, when you do this, the smell gets stronger. And the only thing I know to compare it to is stinky feet. Now, I know I'm not making a good case for you to drink valerian because who wants to drink stinky feet tea? But truthfully, the benefits of it might be worth it on occasion. Now, when I add valerian root to my Better Sleep tea, we make it taste really good because we also add tons of chamomile and peppermint and other herbs that taste delicious. So you don't actually get the stinky feet flavor, you just get the valerian root benefit. But it takes a lot of work to cover up the flavor of valerian because it is strong. Now, why is it that we only use the root of the plant? Well, that's the question that I asked myself recently when I noticed my valerian plant blooming and these flowers smell so good. And I've learned that with herbalism, we kind of want to follow our nose. So if something smells good, that's a pretty good indication that it might be good for us. Now, not always, but sometimes. So in this case, I noticed how good these smelled and I was like, I'm going to go look it up. What could I use the flowers for? And what I learned is every part of the valerian plant is useful. The flowers, the leaves, and the roots. But they all do something slightly different. And they all have a home in my home apothecary. So today we're going to harvest the valerian flower and some valerian leaf so I can dry these. And while I harvest them, I want to tell you a little bit about valerian, how to use it, what to do with it, how to begin using this one in your home apothecary, and let's just get into it. Valerian is one of those plants that really rewards you for slowing down and taking a closer look. It can look a little bit wild in the garden, a little bit untamed, but when you come in close, there are so many neat little details. The leaves of the valerian plant grow in these long feathered pairs along the stem, kind of ladder-like, and each leaflet has this soft, slightly jagged edge. When the light hits them, they're this deep, rich green. They're so healthy and vibrant. And then if you rub the leaves between your fingers, there's a scent there. It's not strong like valerian root, but there's definitely a slightly green, maybe a little bit bitter, plant-like aroma. Now, the leaves are gentle. They're not going to sedate you or knock you out like the root, but they will kind of quietly help the mind to settle and help with digestion, kind of take the edge off, if you will. Now, the flowers are where valerian really surprises people. They grow in these little clusters, and they're soft, almost cloud-like little bunches at the top of the plant. And up close, each flower is so delicate, pale white, blush pink, and they smell so good. It's not heavy like a rose, almost like a clean, honey-like aroma. So here's my beautiful basket of valerian that we've harvested. Now, I didn't harvest any root today because we harvest the roots of all of the plants that we harvest root from in the fall when the plant is about to go dormant. Now, each herb is a little different in the best time to harvest, but for us, generally most of the ones we grow are fall harvest herbs, and valerian is one of those. So we leave the roots alone this time of year and we just let that plant grow and thrive. But I will take multiple cuttings all summer long of the leaves and any blooms that appear, and we're going to use these. Now let's talk a little bit about how to use valerian outside of sleep. This is where valerian really came alive for me, and it's where I think you're going to find a lot of surprising information as well if you dig into the research. So the most fascinating thing I learned is that valerian was used largely during World War I, and then also not as much, but some during World War II, and it was used on the battlefield for first aid. immediately, if you know valerian as a sleep remedy, you're like, why were they putting the soldiers to sleep? That doesn't make sense. Well, valerian has other uses. In this case, they were using valerian to treat shell shock, or PTSD as we know it today, post-traumatic stress disorder. So on the battlefield, what that looked like was actual in-the-moment shock, where a soldier had witnessed something terribly traumatic or they had been majorly injured and they went into shock. And so during World War I, the main thing that the doctors on the field would use to try to attend to the wounded soldiers was valerian root tincture. And the point behind it was to calm hysteria, to kind of regulate the nervous system and help those soldiers come back into their bodies when they were completely dissociated in trauma. Because one of the things that happens with PTSD is you kind of come out of your body mentally and you don't feel your body anymore. If you've ever been through some kind of intense trauma, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You do not have to be a soldier on a battlefield to experience this. I've experienced this from traumatic things that I've been through. But when that happens, it's important to know what can I reach for that's natural, safe, and plant-based. And it turns out that valerian root is an incredible aid for PTSD. So during the day, when you're not trying to be sleepy, but you need a little help with nerves, these leaves can be incredibly powerful. So you're getting some of that valerian benefit without the sedation that comes from the root. The leaves, they're powerful medicine too. But then it gets really, really special when we get to the flowers, because valerian flowers are uplifting. So the root kind of grounds us, the leaf steadies, and the flower lifts. So if you're a note taker, this is how you can remember the parts of the valerian plant. The flower lifts. It's going to lift your mood. It's going to lift your mental state. It's going to lift your state of mind. And so it's a gentle one. It's not sedating. It's not going to make you sleepy. And in fact, my thought for this was to turn it into a tincture and to experiment with combining valerian flower tincture with lemon balm tincture and to experiment with how the two work together. This will be new for me, so I'll have to keep you posted on how this goes. I've never tinctured this one before, but we're going to give it a go. Now, when you tincture valerian, it's important to question, how do we tincture it? So normally when I do an herbal tincture, if I'm doing a whole plant tincture where I'm using every part of the plant, echinacea for instance, when I tincture echinacea, I use the leaves, the flowers, and the roots. So I put it all in one tincture and I add my liquid and I cover it and I brew it. But with valerian, I'm not going to do it that way because each part of the valerian plant works so differently. And if we just combine it all, and if I dry my leaf and flower and I save it till this fall, and then I dry my root and I combine it all and make one tincture, the valerian root is so powerful that it's going to basically overwhelm and take over the whole tincture, and it's going to be incredibly sedating. And I don't want a sedating tincture because I'm not after sleep here. I'm after calm. I'm after a nervous system support. That's what I think this will do. So instead, I'm going to tincture each part of the valerian plant separately. So I'm going to make a tincture from the flowers in one jar, a tincture from the leaves in another jar, and then this fall I will do a tincture from the root in another jar. We actually already have plenty of valerian root tincture. I keep that one on hand because it is a wonderful one. If you have one of those odd nights where you just cannot go to sleep, valerian root will get you there. So I want you to consider how every plant has lots of purposes. And a lot of times when we start to study plants, we kind of like to assign a single use to a plant because we also like to assign a single use to modern drugs. So a lot of times people will say, what can I use instead of insert the drug here? You know, what can I use instead of ibuprofen? What can I use instead of antihistamines? What can I use instead of, you know, a muscle rub? And sometimes there's a clear-cut answer in herbalism for a swap, but more often Herbalism works a little differently because the herbs are supporting the body to do what the body needs to do, and then we're not treating symptoms anymore. So herbalism is more root cause medicine, if that makes sense. So it's just a whole different way of looking at it. And when we get in that kind of like pigeonholed old tradition of every plant has one purpose, and we're like, valerian is for sleep, lemon balm is for nervous system, we're going to miss out on so many other benefits, because it turns out valerian is also for a calm mind without sedation. And it turns out that you can use it other ways other than just for sleep. So I want to encourage you today to take this approach to learning about herbs. I want you to pick one plant, just one. And this week, I want you to research it. I want you to deep dive on it, nerd out, learn everything you can about it. You're going to find an abundance of information on valerian because this is a popular plant among herbalists. So do some digging, and you might be surprised to find even more uses that we didn't cover today. But the idea here is that every plant has many purposes, and we just have to learn how to use them. Isn't it neat how God designed all of plants to bring the help and the healing we need? And He did it in such a way that every part adds another layer of healing for us. Just a reminder, this is not medical advice. This is just a mom here in North Carolina telling you what works for me and my family. And we have largely broken up with our old medicine cabinet, and we've been replacing it with plants for several years. And I want to encourage you to learn to do the same. It's not an overnight transition. It does take some time, but I promise it's so worth it to learn to use plants. They're one of God's greatest gifts to us. So be encouraged. Learn about plants this week. Tell me in the comments, which herb are you going to dig in and study this week? Which one are you most intrigued by? And if you're struggling to figure out where do I start, let me throw out a few suggestions. Start with simple herbs like lemon balm, tulsi, peppermint, chamomile, calendula. If you're feeling stuck and you're like, I don't even know where to start, there's so many to choose from, check out my apothecary starter kit. There are 10 herbs in that kit. This is the kit that I send when you want to start your own home apothecary. And basically there's enough herbs in this to fill up 10 pint jars to line your shelf with all the herbs so you can start making teas and tinctures and salves and all the things. But if you need ideas on which herbs to start with, those 10 herbs are the 10 that I recommend for beginners. They're easy to work with. They have tons and tons of uses, multiple ways to prepare them. They can be teas, they can be tinctures, they can be salves, multiple use herbs. So choose one of those 10 if you're not sure where to start. But the big idea is just to start. Pick up a plant, one plant, any plant, and start learning about it. And I promise you won't be disappointed on the journey that God takes you on. So remember, God has given us everything that we need for health and healing in plants. We just have to learn to use it. So stay tuned and we'll keep learning together. I'll see you next week.